There are an estimated 27 million people that are being sold into slavery right now at this moment as I'm sitting here talking. Between 100 and 300,000 children that are at risk for sexual exploitation every year in the United States of America. You're talking about children, and I think that that is one of the things that people really have to keep in their mind. This 13-year-old child was forced to be with 30 men that very first day. And that was her existence for the next 2 years of her life until she was rescued.
Welcome to Pure Passion. I'm Jason Graves, and I'm your host for today's program. Did you know that there are 27 million victims of human trafficking living on the planet this very moment? 27 million. That's greater than the entire population of Australia. What's even worse, approximately half of those 27 million living slaves are children. And among those who are sold into sexual slavery, at least half of those are children as well. Today, we're going to talk with a very brave lady who has devoted her life to the rescue and rehabilitation of sex trafficking victims. Her name is Colette Burku, and she is the executive director of Free for Life Ministries in Nashville, Tennessee. It's important that we listen to Colette because human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world today, raking in over $34 billion every single year. The damage being done to children and young adults is inestimable. Christ calls us to intervene. In one way or another, we cannot sit idly by and do nothing. We must care. We must act. We must be God's arms of rescue and His voice of healing love to those who have no voice and who live without love. With the Apostle Paul, let's cry out, Christ's love compels us. And now, Colette Burku.
Human trafficking is the force, fraud, or coercion of an individual into a sex act, or to sell them into sexual slavery or debt bondage or slavery for labor. We primarily in our ministry deal with sexual bondage, but we do also deal with labor trafficking as well. In the United States of America, if you are under the age of 18 and you are being used in a way that somebody is gaining financially off of your sexual exploitation, you are automatically a traffic victim in this country. The words child prostitute in the United States of America are an oxymoron. There is no such thing as a child prostitute in this country. There are children that are being prostituted. Very, very different. Because one of the things that I think that people are under the misconception of is that if you are being prostituted, that we automatically think that that person is somehow complicit in the act, and that they are getting some sort of benefit from it, they're getting some sort of payoff for it. I read an article in the newspaper the other day that was like fingernails on a chalkboard to me, and they were saying that the oldest profession is alive and well. This is not a profession. Prostitution is not a profession. It is something that is being perpetuated, and people that are broken are being sold, and our young men and young women that are selling people are also trapped in bondage at the same time. Well, in the United States of America, the State Department puts out a number that there is between 15 and 20,000 people that are supposedly trafficked across international borders every year. A lot of us believe that that number in itself is very low, but we never talk about the number of our own children that are being prostituted or sexually exploited on our very own streets, in houses. That number is, the Justice Department puts out a number that there are approximately, and numbers are always estimates at best, between 100 and 300,000 children that are at risk for sexual exploitation every year in the United States of America. Basically, you're talking about children, and I think that that is one of the things that people really have to keep in their mind when you're talking about, children that are being prostituted, not just other people that are being trafficking, but let's say you're talking about specifically people that are under the age of 18. Well, children are very easily manipulated. They're very easily lured. A lot of these children come from a sexual abuse in their backgrounds. They could come from broken homes. People that are interested in pedophilia and different things like that, they know what to look for. So traffickers know what to look for in the luring of a child or the luring of a young woman into the world of trafficking. They might initially, in this country, what you hear a lot of times is now the young women will say, "This is my boyfriend." They don't refer to him as maybe somebody who is pimping them. This is their boyfriend. So this young girl now is confused. She thinks that, well, how can this person say that they love me, but they're also selling me? And there's a lot of confusion that is involved in then being sexually exploited. The promise of love, I think, is at the base of all of this, is a child that might be broken or a young woman that might be broken, or the promise of a job for somebody that is in poverty. There was a case in the United States here that I can talk about because it was publicized. And this young girl was from Mexico. She was 13 years old, and she was approached by somebody who said, "There is a job for you in a restaurant. Come and work and be able to send money back to your family that I know they desperately need." Well, when she got here to the United States, there was no job. And that very first day, this 13-year-old child was forced to be with 30 men that very first day. And that was her existence for the next 2 years of her life until she was rescued.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone. Your passion.
Hi, my name's Andy Reese, and I want to tell you a short story. Carlos Santana was the lead guitarist for a great band for a lot of years, and he's a great guitarist and great musician now. When he was 10 years old, he was molested by his uncle for a number of years. And he shared with Rolling Stone magazine some years ago about how he battled against suicide. 7 times he came close. And he was despairing. And then he discovered something. Then he began to open his heart and turn his heart to Papa God, turn his heart to the goodness of God. He discovered something about forgiveness. I want to read something to you in his very own words. "My God is a God of kindness and compassion. But we as people have free will, including the man who molested me. There's the flesh and there's the spirit. What happened to my body, not to me. It wasn't about me. The purity and the innocence is still intact. The Spirit has offered me a way out of this mother of insanity, because otherwise I would have been frothing at the mouth. Forgiveness is extremely liberating. You can be free." Carlos Santana discovered something after all those years that I want to just mention real briefly, and that is, there are people who did things to you. There are things that happened to you, and you were primarily an innocent victim of those things. What Carlos said here about the purity and the innocence being restored, his perspective on what happened after all these years says something very telling. And it says this: it's not what happened to Carlos Santana that caused this debilitation throughout his life until now. But it's what Carlos Santana believed about what happened to him. And it's how he held the perpetrator in anger and in judgment that kept he himself in jail or in prison. Carlos Santana discovered a great truth. One is that his perspective about his past was not God's perspective. And when he went to God and he said, God, what do you think about this? God, what do you think about me? Am I tainted? Am I destroyed? Am I damaged goods? God spoke to him and said, no. God said, your body was used, but your body's renewed every day. Every cell that was in your body at that time is gone. You're a new person. And that man that did that to you, he's the one with the problem, not you. You're my child. And Carlos Santana discovered that forgiveness was the key for he himself being free. If you're watching today and you're struggling over something that's happened to you, and you're struggling because you're angry about the person who did it, I'm here to tell you a couple things. One is that that person did something horribly wrong. And forgiveness doesn't mean that it was right, and it doesn't mean that you have to restore a relationship with that person. It doesn't even mean you have to have kindly feelings toward that person. What it means is that you are willing to forgive a debt that was owed you by this person. For example, Carlos Santana could have said, Uncle, you owed me safety. You owed me companionship. You owed me to be an example. You owed me to be a safe relative. And you didn't pay. But today, I forgive the debt you owed me. You still owe it, but I forgive that debt. The second thing about forgiveness is that you refuse to judge anymore. Carlos may have said to his uncle, I have a right to judge you, but I give up that right because I don't know why you acted the way you did. Only God knows. Only God's omniscient. And so I give up my judgment of your motives and of your heart, and I give that judgment to God. The Bible says we'll be judged in the way we judge, and we don't know why people act. I don't know sometimes why I act the way that I do. The third thing about forgiveness I want you to know is that you give up your demand to get relief from the person who hurt you, and you look to God to heal the pain. In Carlos Santana's words, it might have been, Uncle, I stop looking to you to heal the pain in me, looking to you to make it right, looking to you to say the words that will set me free. I give up demanding that from you because you may not be able to do it. You may not be willing to do it. But the pain in me can be set free because of what Jesus Christ did. He bore our pain. He bore our suffering. And he made a way for us to sit with Papa God and to hear Papa God tell us the truth about what happened. I want to encourage you today to take those steps that Carlos Santana took. I want you to think about what happened and ask God to help you to forgive the person. Number one, cancel the debt that was owed. Just let it go. It won't be paid. So cancel it. Number two, give up your right and your demand to judge. You don't know why the person did what they did. Only God knows. Let him do all that. And thirdly, go to God to get your pain healed. The person themselves won't be able to heal it probably, but God will for sure. If you will take those steps, I will guarantee you, because I'm a product of that very same forgiveness and found tremendous freedom. It was like a weight that was on me was lifted. Just like the story about Carlos Santana, where the weight on him was lifted, and for the rest of his days, there's peace. When he looks back at that memory, nothing changed. The memory's still just as true as it ever was. But Carlos changed. His view of the memory changed. He has peace when he looks back, and it haunts him no more. You can be free in that exact same way. God bless you.
Pure passion beats for Christ alone. Pure passion.
There are an estimated 27 million people that are being sold into slavery right now at this moment as I'm sitting here talking. And if you think that those 27 million people, when they are reintegrated back into society, will not raise another generation of people that is their identity, we're fooling ourselves. So we are sowing this generation upon generation upon generation. And because the culture of India, there is a lot of men that visit prostitutes that think that it is part of your cultural right. They don't even consider it as adultery. That it becomes perpetuated in that society. And that is why India, I believe, is one of the largest places where children and young women are being sold into servitude. The United States is one of the top 10 destination places in the world. And I think people are astounded to hear that, because like we were talking about, is that people were saying that this is not a problem here in the United States. This is a problem that goes on around across the globe, not here though. But other countries, you'll find that the Eastern Bloc, because of poverty and lack of opportunity, lack of education, countries like Moldova, Russia, Romania, these countries are hotbeds for their young women and children to be lured into trafficking. Interpol put out a number recently that says there are approximately 30,000 young women missing from Romania right now. That's astronomical to me. I think to myself, when you think of a number that they estimate there are 13 million children, which that is under the age of 18, being sold into slavery right now at this moment, I think to myself, how is there not a cry from humanity going out around the world? How do you miss 13 million children that nobody is caring enough to be able to jump on board this epidemic? There is law enforcement that is perpetuating this here, even in the United States. How you work around that is you build bridges with people that you know you can trust, to be able to work with district attorneys, to be able to get the largest sentences that you possibly can for people when they are arrested, and that the public just doesn't stand for it anymore. I think that that is one of the things, is that the public really needs to get on board this epidemic like they did with the AIDS epidemic. All of a sudden you heard so much about it and people were throwing so much money after it, but you have to remember that this is organized crime at its finest. This is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the entire world, and there is an estimated $34 billion being pulled down by criminals every single year off the buying and selling of human beings. This is big business. And unless we throw that same kind of money from the public at this problem, then we are going to be very, very hard pressed to be able to get a handle on this. George Bush did enact a law in 2006 against trafficking, but having a law on the books sometimes is not enough. People have to force law enforcement to be on the lookout for it. In our state, where I am right now, in Tennessee, we literally just had a law put on the books 2 weeks ago. There is not a law against the selling of human beings in every single state in the United States. And that is like mind-boggling. You would think that that would be one of the first things that you would have sat down and written. Buying and selling of people against the law. But that's not the truth.
Pure passion beats for Christ alone. Pure passion.
There was a young woman, and she gave an interview, and she said the very first day with the very first person that raped her, that was the day her God died. And that really is the core of this. That is what happens to you at your soul, is that this is so contrary to what should be done to you, what should basically be who God created you to be, that you can't even wrap your mind around the fact that there is a creator in the world that called you to be something else. It's the core of your identity, who you are now. There is shame embroiled in it. Most of these victims will be HIV positive. There is physical abuse, there is torture, there is mental abuse. You are broken at the very core of who you are as a human being. And what I think that people don't understand, and what we really work to talk to people about, is that there is a lot of documentaries, there is a lot of film projects that are done that show the rescue of trafficking victims, but there is very, very little that is shown about the cost of what this is to a human being, and the extent that it takes, and the time that it takes to be able to be restored and to come back from something like this. I know from being an abuse victim myself, what it took for me to be able to be whole and walk in freedom from it. I cannot imagine what it would take to come back from being raped 30 times a day, maybe for the next 3 to 4 years of your life. We believe that without Christ in this equation, all of the best psychologists in the world will never bring somebody to complete wholeness. And so it is not a prerequisite for us in who we work with, but the most successful people that are working with these victims are Christians. And they bring the love of Christ into whatever it is that they do, the compassion of Christ, the wholeness, the identity that Christ would want you to have. And they have had thousands of young women be restored and go on to productive lives, be great mothers to their children that they will have, because they now have wholeness. They now have a future and a hope that God intended for them to have in the first place. I'm the founder of a ministry called Free for Life Ministries. What we found out is that there are safe houses and shelters in every single country in the world, but most of those shelters are living literally hand to mouth. Some of them can't feed their children and young women 3 times a day because there isn't enough finances to be able to do that. They aren't able to buy the AIDS medicine that might be needed. So what we do is we don't just raise awareness, but we give people the opportunity to partner with us to be able to sow into these safe houses around the world that are doing the work out there on the ground. What is really astounding to me is that safe houses are shutting their doors from lack of finances. There is a woman in Russia right now as we sit here. Her budget is $47,000 a year. She is one of 2 experts on the ground in Russia that had to close her doors from lack of finances. We cannot afford to lose a house or a shelter or somewhere that these children and young women can find restoration. For somebody that might be being used, that is being prostituted, you are not a prostitute. Christ sees you as whole, as lovely. Reach out to Him, call upon the name of Jesus, and ask Him to help you. Ask Him to fill your heart, even in the midst of what you might be going through, with His love, with renewing your mind, and sowing the things that you need into your life, even in the midst of what you are, to see Him as who He is, as your salvation through this, and know that He is there to hear your cries and hear your prayers, even when others don't see you.
Pure passion that beats for Christ alone.
It is difficult to fathom the depravity that exists in the heart of man today. Not only are we slaughtering tens of millions of children before they've had the chance to draw their first breath, we're also part of a world that allows the wholesale destruction of helpless children already born. Oh, we sigh at the stories, hoping somebody does something about it, but soon return to our $6 lattes and plans for our next gambling junket to Vegas. Something is seriously wrong with this picture. It's as if the God of this age has blinded the eyes of man so that he can no longer see the truth. We just don't seem to care anymore. We become so jaded in our thinking that even when we recognize the truth of God's call on His people, we still do nothing about it. Beloved, faith without works is dead. Each and every one of those 27 million victims of human trafficking is a person created in the image of God and dearly loved by Him. How can we stand by hoping someone else will help them when God's call to rescue the perishing is so clear in His Word? It could be your son, your daughter, locked up in that room somewhere, dying daily from the brutality of the slave traders. Why not contact Free for Life Ministries and ask them how you can help? Just go to freeforlifeministries.com or visit our website for a link to theirs. We're at purepassion.us. Until next week, I'm Jason Graves for Pure Passion, wishing you boldness to serve God in rescuing the perishing.
More intimate with you, Lord. Turning away from all the darkness, following you to where the light is. Guide the steps I'm taking.